I guess we can go ahead and get started. I will call us to order 31. Julie, could you roll call us in, please?
Yep. JC Herman.
Yes, I'm here.
Natalie Silly.
Here.
Andrew Weimer. Looks like he's here. And Elaine Siegel is not joining us.
No, unfortunately, Elaine let me know today she's stepping off the committee.
Okay.
Her plate is too full right now. And then once it opens up a little bit more, she'll come back and join us. Unless I missed them, I didn't see the December 22nd minutes go out. Am I incorrect?
I did not take minutes on that day. I'm not sure. I haven't been provided minutes. I'm happy to look over them if needed.
Okay. So we'll table the approval of the minutes for December 22nd, 2022, which will bring us into old business. I'm going to try to keep our meeting. Got a lot of stuff to go through. In terms of the for action recommendation to the board regarding the basketball court policies, we are going to table that again. But I just want to have everyone keep in mind that we are going to start working on that as soon as we get these ordinances done, because we want to make sure we have that done before summer comes back around. And then the update on the REDI committee providing content for the equity page. I put together the Google Doc. I have thrown some stuff up there. I'm hoping everyone's able to access it. And then Natalie, you can let us know if that turns out to be a good format. Or if you feel like there's an easier way for you to get information from us up there.
Okay.
Just one thing I wanted to point out that I put up there. There is a class action suit where multiple farmers from disadvantaged communities are suing the USDA. And there's different groups.
JC, I lost you.
Yeah, you're frozen.
JC, if you can hear me.
I am frozen yet?
Now you are.
Okay, I'm back.
Yes.
Yes. We just heard you at class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might try. Sometimes it's helpful if you stop your video. So if you take your video down, sometimes that helps with the freezing.
I'm asking less of my electronics that way. There's a class action lawsuit of multiple disenfranchised groups of farmers, women farmers, Latino farmers, Black farmers. There was an article on NPR that was talking about the class action lawsuit. And then there's also one of the episodes of the 1619 Project from the New York Times was about the history of Black farmers in the United States. I just thought those were two particularly interesting, articles and podcasts to link together if anyone is interested in listening to that. I just wanted to point that out.
Can I ask a question about the Google Doc? Am I just assuming anything put into the Google Doc we all agree should be posted, or do we need to discuss it first as a committee, or is there a process with that?
That's a good question. Aisha, what do you think? Should we at each meeting approve what's going up the next month?
I think at least initially in the beginning, there should be some sort of process, at least to make sure that the standards that are there are being met. So I do think a good way to possibly catch it is to just do a walkthrough in this meeting, or to review it before the meeting and bring any questions about things that were uploaded, if there are any, to this meeting.
Okay. I haven't checked it in a few. I don't know if anyone else has put anything up there. I think last time I put something up, it was all things that I had thrown up there. I don't know if it's changed since
Yeah.
then. Okay.
I don't think so. I think it's just the things that you've listed.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, good to see you all.
You too. I'm
Hi.
freezing, so I'm keeping my video off so you can I can participate properly. Andrew, I don't know if you were here earlier. I do just want to take a moment to introduce you to Mark, interested in joining the committee. We spoke yesterday, and then we're going to meet again next week and find out if he's still interested and wants to join us.
Yeah, great.
And then also just to let you know, Elaine has had to make the difficult decision of stepping off the committee because her plate is just too full right now. She's going to try to touch base with us when she's got more
Okay.
available time.
She will be missed.
Very much so. Very much so. I let her know. Do we want to run through what's on that Google Doc real fast? Or what do you all think? Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, can I just ask, I'm sorry, I had another meeting go long, and so I thought I heard Natalie say what the process is for this. Are we going to all agree to this as a committee that those will be included? Can you just catch me up in like 2 or 3 sentences on what was agreed upon?
So what we talked about was initially we will go over everything as a committee so we can make sure that everything's up to par. And then hopefully eventually, we'll be good enough at this that it'll be a non-issue.
Okay.
Hold on, where did my tabs go? I think I'm sorry, hold on. I'm just pulling up the Okay, so the things I've put up there so far, there's the Moth Radio Hour podcast episode where the second story is Dr. Sybil Jordan Hampton. She was one of the kids that helped desegregate schools in, if I'm remembering correctly, I think in Birmingham. She wasn't in the first round of kids who went, but she was in the second round. And the story is about her receiving her 20th reunion invitation. I thought that was very interesting. It was a good listen. The stories on either end of that too were a good listen, but it wasn't, necessarily related to Black history. The second thing I put on there, there is a seed company called Back to the Roots. If you purchase seed packs from them and then you post it on social media, like within their guidelines, they will donate a grow kit to an underfunded school. And they have changed their mission a bit where they are specifically targeting Black and Latino schools now. Let's see. And then there was the 2 other things that I had mentioned already. The Black Farmers Call for Justice from the USDA, and then the History of Black Farmers in the United States, which is the 1619 podcast. And then the last thing I put on there, Chicago, it has a free bicycle program that I just heard about recently. They have, I forget, some enormous amount of bicycles that they're giving out over the next several years that people can apply for. And the idea is not only to help provide more transportation, but help make the city more bike friendly in neighborhoods that are not currently. That's just like a rundown of the things that I've thrown in there.
JC, I just requested access to it. I'm not able to open it.
That's not nice.
Those things all sound good to me. I'm wondering if there's like, as we're coming across things, is there any like specific theme we should be looking for content for the page? You know, events or like information that's going on locally or nationally? Like, is there any kind of theme, Aisha, that you think we should stick to for choosing content?
On that document, there standards on there for what there should be. I haven't looked at the Google Doc that was created, but what I shared was specific standards around what people should be identifying on there. So I would have to go back to look at the Google Doc to see it, unless someone can share it to see if any of that is there. But the point of it was for this committee to be contributing to the resources that are listed on the page around equity and diversity, racial equity, and to be constantly updating those things so that it's a living document. And it also is creating an opportunity for basically to have more up-to-date, consistent resources. So that's the purpose of this committee consistently contributing to it.
Okay. I think you had talked about that in the email that you sent JC and I. Hold on.
Well, now also remind me, Aisha, where you sent it to the committee, where it was like, you know, it should be different medium. We should be thinking about, you know, who's underrepresented.
I don't think I sent it to the committee. I think that it was, I don't think that went out to the full committee.
Oh, okay. So it was just in that email to Natalie and I?
I think so.
I've got it pulled up.
Okay.
Is it okay if I read it? What you wrote, Aisha?
Yep.
You said a Google Doc sounds great. I think we have already begun to identify some of the standards in the last meeting. Initially, I can assist with reviewing the resources, and a long-term way to address it could be including a statement at the top of the document as a reminder to the contributors and a note to the community who will access it. This document contains resources completed by the REDI committee at Ridgeville Park District. The intention of this resource page is to further our community's learning and connection to topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The recommendations are chosen because they reflect a diversity of the viewpoints of scholars in their field. The intended use of these items are as resources, not training materials. They are not aligned with any political affiliation and are not an endorsement of any celebrity or public figure.
Yeah, so that was recommended language to be included at the top to help when people are deciding what to contribute, but also for people who access it, for them to have an idea too of what this is, and that the committee isn't, you know, endorsing anyone or anything by contributing it. So I think that a statement similar to that, it might be a statement that you all want to tweak or adjust or change or add some things. But having some sort of guide at the top of this that lives on that document will be useful and helpful. I see it now.
I'm going to copy and paste it and put it at the top.
I just did.
Oh, thank you so much, Natalie.
And this should say compiled.
I guess I have a question related to what Aisha talked about, what the like standards, or, you know, what how we choose what we put up is, I guess I'm curious how far the spread is. Like, are we focusing particularly on parks and what racial equity looks like in parks? Because this could spread really broad to the point of like, almost like, why are we putting it up there? So I guess I'm curious about that.
Well, I can share that that's something that this committee should determine, like what the scope is. And it comes from the equity page that had a few resources and recommendations, and some of those things needed to have been edited a little bit. One sort of based on things that were happening in the world and removing some content that was aligned to that, and then adding some things for populations that were sort of not addressed. So this was a way to what's a living sort of way that can be done, was to create this a Google Doc. So I think that's a good direction to go, is for the committee to determine, what are the parameters.
I mean, my personal opinion, I think I like what Andrew is suggesting. I think especially coming out of the training that we did with you, Aisha, that last one, just talking specifically about the basketball courts, that's so relevant to us. And I think that's great information to include on the equity page. And I think the closer we can stick to topics and issues that address or affect our immediate community is important. And parks as a whole nationwide. I mean, the basketball issue, that's a nationwide park issue. And so I think that makes sense to be there. And anything else that's happening within our community, I think makes sense to put up there as well.
So I would include, if you all are in agreement with that's something that should be included in that little blurb at the top of that page. So that
Okay.
it's another reminder when people are contributing, and then when people are accessing it, for them to know, if the question, why don't they have anything about this or this? Like, nope, this is just about this specific thing.
Okay. I'm just going to put JC, how do you feel about that?
I think that's fantastic.
I'm just going to put a little note on that in the Google Doc, and I'll go back later and kind of revise it. I mean, I'm essentially going to leave it exactly as it is, but I'll add that bit about local issues and nationwide issues relating to parks and recreation.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect.
And then I'll get it up on the website. Sorry, I've been pretty swamped with getting the application done. I've been a little distracted, so I will get to this. It's on my list.
No worries. Thank you. I also, I'll have some time tomorrow too, that I'll look at it and see what I can do to hopefully make it so that you don't really have much work to do on it at all.
Like the MLK drive that you sent me on MLK Day, like I think things like that, like that's perfect because that's happening local, and that was a great thing to share on our social media pages. I can also link it to the equity page as well. And the basketball. Aisha, is there any way for me to pull? Can you send me the PowerPoint from that last training so I can pull that information, or is it easy for you to send it to me?
I can just send you the resources.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I had that jotted down in my notes from the training for us I think particularly that the video about the basketball playing in parks, I think it'd be important for us to put up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there anything else on the equity page? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I actually do have one last thing. I am working on diversifying my sources, but I'm going to need a little help because most of what I get comes from NPR. So I'm going to need some help from the rest of you to kind of even that, round that out a bit. I don't have a whole lot of time for media consumption in my life these days, but I got to do a better job of getting some more sources in there.
I'm wondering about sources. Aisha, is there any kind of guidelines we should be asking ourselves as we're picking sources? I understand that there was a piece about we're not endorsing celebrity or public figure. It's not meant to be aligned with political affiliation. But in terms of just the individual or the source, either the individual that's writing it or if it's a quote from, whatever it is, like, is there any questions that we should ask ourselves?
I think what we just want to be mindful of is the content. Sometimes if you want to diversify who are the sources of the material, sometimes using the typical sort of mainstream outlets might not get you to that point. So we don't want to be so narrow in our focus that we actually aren't being inclusive, but we also want to be discerning in what we identify and choose, and making sure that we are just reading through and making sure that it follows a standard, that it is sort of on track and aligned with what the Park District is trying to say, connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
So I think having this initial process of having these standards and then reviewing these things and bringing questions here will help to sort of weed out if there needs to be, a tighter sort of definition or guidance around what the resources are that people choose.
Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, I have a question, 2 questions. The first would be, I think there was some language of scholarly resources in the description, and just observing that and obviously these don't have to be mutually exclusive, but it looks like we have primarily journalistic resources, and just noting, right, that could be a place for us to look at is some more, perhaps less. Not that we have to disregard journalism, but that we can expand the possibilities to include scholarship and in the myriad of forms that it can take. The other question I have is, whose list is this? Is this our committee's list, or is this the Park District's list? Because I'm going to approach this list very differently based on whose list this is. If it's the Park District's, then I think in a sense we have kind of an oversight role of trying to provide feedback on that. If it's our list, it's a way of curating and marking our own agenda that we hope sets a trajectory for the Park District. So I think there's a distinction there. I'm curious what the answer is.
I think that's a good question too, as far as approvals as well, because I know the part of the goal of this committee is to recommend what the Park District should be amplifying or saying. So that's a really good question to ask. If the committee is posting something like this, where what's the line with what the Park District has a hand in or has to approve? I'm not sure who would, Natalie, maybe you know the answer to that, or where that should go, if it should go back to the discussion.
I mean, I'm happy to confirm that. Honestly, maybe that's a question, JC, for your report for the next board meeting.
Yeah.
My instinct says, I think as long as there's a caveat in the description on the bulletin board or whatever this is on the equity page that lists these resources, that these were selected by the REDI committee as tools that we are using, that represent, or that, kind of guide our conversations and what the work that we're doing. I think that's probably fine. The board, and this, sometimes this changes, but they don't really want to micromanage us in that way. I think when there's big things having to do with budgets or speaking on behalf of the Park District or making decisions on behalf of the Park District, those need to come in recommendation form, or asking, they need to come in recommendation form. I think in terms of asking permission to post resources on our equity page, as long as we make that caveat, I don't think they necessarily will want to micromanage that.
That's my guess too. I mean, in my board report, I can put in about, us trying to keep the equity page fresh, so it's visited frequently. I can share a copy of the Google Doc with the guidelines at the top, and we can get some feedback from the board and see what they think. I do just want to remind everybody. I know, Natalie, this is the forefront of your mind. Just a reminder, the board that we're going to be working with, in the next couple of months is not the same board that we're going to be working with after the next couple months. So it's possible that we'll get one answer now and we'll have to ask again later, depending on who's, what happens. But I'll add that to the board report.
Yeah. That's why I said it always changes depending on who's serving. So I think it's worth bringing up in the meeting just to make sure we're all on the same page, but that will be my guess that that's going to be the answer.
Okay. Noted. All right. Okay. So we good on the equity page for now? Awesome. All right. So that brings us to new business. Update from the January board meeting. There really wasn't a whole bunch to update. I didn't have a lot to update them either, other than Aisha did the 3 weeks of training, which I will just say again, Aisha, you really did a phenomenal job. I think you were really able to synthesize information that the Park District needed through that equity lens, that I think is going to be really important moving forward. And I think that those training videos are going to establish some good content and some good guidelines for staff moving forward. I'm excited about having that on in the archives. And then I guess the only other update from the board meeting is our plan hopefully is to get these edits pretty close to finished in the meeting today. I will meet with Matt Mitchell to go over them. The purpose of that meeting will be Matt Mitchell is an attorney. He is going to just double check and make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to legally put the Park District in a sort of compromising position. Once he approves that, then it will go to the Park District's lawyer, because although Matt Mitchell is an attorney, he's not the Park District's attorney. This extra step is being taken just as a cost-saving measure, in hopes of eliminating any back and forth between the committee and the lawyer, incurring any extra lawyer fees. And then hopefully, if that all goes well, in the March meeting, I will be recommending the changes that we put forth. Now that I'm saying that, I am, however, realizing that this agenda item isn't listed as for action. Is that going to be problematic for our recommendation?
I don't think so. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know how.
Can we make a motion to change it right now or something, or?
No.
No.
I mean, we can't make a motion to add that to the agenda. I'm just wondering if we need the motion at all. Like if we need if we do, JC, did Elaine do the ones that she was assigned?
No.
Because we will need to go over those too. So I'm wondering if maybe we go through ours today and then do the other ones and either meet for a special meeting before the next board meeting or just put it on the next agenda.
Let's see how this goes going through them, and then maybe we can make that decision. Because maybe if it's a matter of just literally putting on for action and we meet for like 20 minutes to get that through and make sure we're doing it properly.
Yeah.
Once we go through, we'll know how much more work we have to do and what that will entail. Okay. All right, so the first ordinance is the one that I did, the begging that we all did together that I typed up, the begging or soliciting donations. Hold on, of course, this is like the one thing that I did not pull up ahead of time. I removed the begging part because I felt like that was not necessary, and had the whole ordinance just be about the soliciting contributions. And then we had talked about having it be from more of a positive point of view. So the way that it ended up being written, it says soliciting, taking up collections, or receiving contributions of money or anything else of value on Park District property is allowed once a permit to do so has been acquired through the Park District. So Natalie and I lost you. Here you are. Natalie and I had a conversation about, because when the Park District rewrote the ordinance for the barbecuing, the word permit came into question. So Natalie, just so you know, Aisha and I talked about that yesterday. And so it's not so much the word permit that's problematic. It's the access to and the process not being ambiguous, right? So that everybody has access to the permits, and everybody knows exactly what that process looks like and what they'll need. So, Aisha and I talked about some changes that we could make to the website so those permits are easier to find. Like some of this doesn't have to do specifically with the ordinance in there, but some changes that would make the gathering of the permit more equitable for anybody who's going to come in and ask for one.
Okay. Do you know what the process is now to get the permit?
Well, no, that's the other thing. I have no idea. Do you?
Yeah.
For like specifically for receiving contributions, monetary or whatever?
I don't know. Well, actually, maybe I don't know then. I know what the permit process is like if you are having an event or wanting to use Park District space, asking for donations or contributions. I don't know. I mean, we have vendors that sell things and that accept donations, and there's a application for that. I don't know. Would that be the same, do you think?
Soliciting, taking up collections, receiving contributions, money for anything else.
I'm sorry, JC, will you tell me what number that is so I can look at it? And
it's on page 22, section 6.05.
Thank you.
I'm going to assume that that's the same thing.
So there's an application, not a permit. Or are you all using? So part of what JC and I talked about was making sure there was consistency in language, and then on the website. So these are mitigating any access issues so that people know when you're telling them to go to a specific place that is clear about how to get there, and then making sure that once they get there, that the process is clear enough so that it eliminates the possibility for there to be different people approving a permit in different ways.
So I actually
for the permit, the permit process to know what that even looked like.
I just made a page that I just enabled, ironically, the other day. I'll put it in the link. It's our vendor page. So for people who want to partner on a program, run their program in the park, sell food or goods at our events, have their own event. It's like a whole page with all the applications and all of that stuff on it. So that's on the website now. I'm going to send it to you guys. I think what's confusing about this piece of the ordinance, JC, is that it's like two separate things. It's like begging or panhandling, as it says, and like soliciting payments for things. The soliciting payment, or not soliciting payment, I guess, or receiving contributions, that happens all the time. We partner with people all the time, and you pay for their programs, and like we have a whole process for that. I think it can be clearer and maybe separated from the begging and panhandling. And maybe are you suggesting that we take out the begging and panhandling piece altogether and just kind of rewrite that one to address specifically the permit process for receiving funds?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Which, I mean, I guess, I don't,
So the piece for clarification with Matt is the park district required to have something in the ordinance that talks about that specifically?
about the panhandling piece?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And JC, if it's helpful, I can look at that one too and make a recommendation on how we could separate it based on like the process that's already in place for folks like essentially partnering with us or like renting the space or using the space.
Yes, but I'm now also curious if there's somewhere else in the general ordinance that talks about that separately.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, mine kind of was. Mine is about gatherings and parades and
Is there anything about collection and receipt of monies, section 4.01? Okay, I think that this one needs a little more research, more than I realized. I didn't think about this piece of like, yeah.
JC, I know we had also briefly, when I know we talked about this ordinance a little bit, and in that conversation did a brief look at other park districts and specifically looking at if and how they address begging and panhandling. I think revisiting that too might also be.
Oh yes, of course. Looking at how other park districts do it. Okay. Just real fast, just to remind you, when you looked at the other park district, that was in regards to the disorderly conduct. But I think that we should do the same thing for panhandling.
You know what's going to be great about getting this ordinance retyped? When it's a digital copy that I can actually like manipulate in some legal ways, I can like hot link some of these things. So like anytime it says permit, you can click on permit and it will take you to the permit page. You know, I'll be able to do a lot.
Cool.
I'll be able to do so much more when this guy is retyped.
I didn't think about that. I personally, what I was super excited about was having the table of contents be parallel to the edges of the page.
And hot link that. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I mean, I've put on, and I sent you guys the page to the vendor page, or the link to the vendor page I made. I've got that now on the bottom of all the pages that even discuss permit or partnering. But it would be nice to make that even more accessible.
Okay, so let's sit on this one. This one's going to need a little bit more work. Hold on, I'm just taking some notes real fast. Okay. Let's see, the next one on the list was, I believe yours, Natalie, the parades, public gatherings, assemblies, and picnics.
Yep. Okay, hold on. So 6.2 is on page boop. Beep boop bop. 21. No, that's wrong. Nope. I lied to you all. Hold on.
Well, it's because, right, like the pages on the PDF are different than on the actual document.
Yeah. In the document, it's on page 29, 6.2, parades, public gathering, and assemblies. So basically, this is talking about if external organizations want to hold a meeting, an assembly, a ceremony, exhibition, entertainment, parades, processions, or other public gatherings or similar activities on Park District property, and the amount of people will exceed 15, they must have a permit from us. It says, however, this ordinance shall not apply to students going to and from school, classes, or participating in educational activities under the immediate direction and the supervision of school authorities or a governmental agency acting within the scope of its functions, nor shall a permit be required for scheduled activities of the Park District. I will say, with the school, I mean, this is just kind of minute, I guess, but even with the educational activities, we still ask for a permit or for at least like a heads up that it's happening so we can reserve this park space for you. It's not a matter of saying yes or no. It's really just about like, I want to make sure that I'm not going to book a birthday party in the park if Oakton's coming over to use the playground. So we do, and we have a relationship with, Little Beans and Oakton. I think those are the two primary, I guess, with educational or childcare facilities around us that use the parks in that manner. So I don't know if that needs to be clarified in the ordinance or not. That would be a question. The part B of this one talks about any person seeking to obtain a permit to engage in the above activities needs to file an application with the park districts not less than 72 hours before the date or activity in question. That is nice, but is not, I mean, people ask like the day before and we could do it. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of like a practice versus policy thing. I don't know if that needs to be clarified, but beyond those questions that I had, there's nothing really in this particular piece of the ordinance that I think can be removed. Like those are all important things. And the conversation surrounding the permit or the application for reservation came up quite a bit when we talked about the barbecue policy, which just quickly leads me to 6.21, my other one. That 6.21 has already been struck from the ordinance. So that one is already gone. It's one that Pat had identified, or sorry, Dr. Effiam had identified and was discussed quite a bit during the creation of the barbecue policy. So that one's already not there. But in that conversation about the barbecue policy, a lot of conversation came up about the word permit. And should we use the word permit? Should we switch to reservation? I believe for the sake of barbecuing, we've called it a reservation. I think from what I remember, the conversation around that specifically was how accessible it sounded. I guess the word permit made it seem like a harder process maybe to go through to get it, whereas a reservation felt a little less formal and more accessible. So that's that. Those are the things that stood out to me about this 6.2.
I think it would make sense to use, right, like Aisha's saying, to use the same term across the board.
Mhm,
I agree. I think reservation sounds welcoming. And
mhm.
I think permit sounds like, let's see about it. So if we're able to change all the permit wording to reservation, I think that would be helpful. But I also think that we need to clarify the school use, right? Because if I remember correctly, right, Oakton, right, when we think about Oakton, Oakton is one school, but if I remember correctly, last spring, there were multiple classes that had made plans to come to Ridgeville, and only some of them had informed you all, and they would have not all fit. So I think that the clarifying the school use, I think would be really important for them to also make a reservation, just to make sure that that space is available to them. So I think that one should get rewritten to reflect that. And then I think it would also be helpful to share that information with Oakton and Little Beans once it's properly written, so that they're aware moving forward.
I mean, the other problem with this and with like even the barbecue policy, it's on the website, but right now there's nowhere for people to know this information. Like even when the board was discussing the barbecue policy, you know, Brian and I kept making the point, like, make a policy or don't make a policy, because it took them a really long time to get to it. I was like, people are still barbecuing. They're still coming. Like they don't know either way that they can or cannot. And at the time, per the ordinance, they weren't allowed to barbecue on Park District property. But nobody knows that. So I think a lot of this too has to just do with transparency and accessibility of information, and figuring out how to make it known, widely known, that like we do recommend having a reservation for these types of things.
I mean, is this another signage issue?
It's probably a signage issue.
Right? Can we pop up a QR code at the parks? Like interested in enjoying the parks, like right, and with with more than 15 people. I mean, it would be a better sign than that. But you know.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly brainstorm on that, but I think that's part of the ticket, you know. And I understand and I agree that the word reservation is more welcoming than permit, but sometimes it is a permit. You need a permit. Like if you're going to be selling things on the park property, it is a permit. We need proof of insurance. It's a whole ordeal to go through. Now, if you're just bringing like, you know, the 5th grade class over to like have a party and play on the playground, you can call that a reservation. There's not, you know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of hoops that we need to make you jump through to do that. So I think there is kind of levels to how, there's levels to how things need to be done. And I think more transparency about all of those procedures needs to be better. And maybe we just need to iron out the details here so we can take that to the board and say, here's how we recommend identifying each of these procedures. Can we like incorporate this into the ordinance and then figure out how to, you know, share that information with the community?
Well, to be honest with you, I think a lot of what we're going to see in the ordinance that needs to be changed is going to be around permits and reservations. So if we could get a blanket approval from the board to set those differentiation, that will slow down the process of rewriting the ordinances, right? Like we wouldn't have to go back and forth with them for each one.
Yeah. So then does it make sense to identify all, and maybe that's what Pat did when she gave us this list, but does it make sense to identify all the parts of the ordinances that speak to permits and look at them and then see if we can just create one new policy in the same way that they did with like the barbecue policy, or when they did any other amendments that you'll find in the ordinance, and say maybe we can strike these and add this, and this addresses all of the permit reservation issues that will come up for the park district.
I think that's wise, and that's something else that, and I thank you for the reminder, because I haven't. I talked to Aisha about this yesterday. When I was going through Dr. Efiam's report, she didn't actually go through the whole ordinance. It says in there that the committee should go through the entire ordinance based on her recommendations. And I think the ones that we're working on were the ones that she pulled out to get started with. But it specifically says in her report that the rest of the ordinance needs to be gone through. So that's something, you know, to bring up with the board also, because that clearly would require more contract time with Aisha for her to be able to go through all that. And I agree with you. I think that going through and looking at the permit and reservation piece, I think is going to be a lot of this. I mean, we know there's other things, like we need to fix the gendered, we need to fix some of the definitions. But I'm guessing that the bulk of what needs to be changed in the ordinance is going to be around the permits and the reservations.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
once the ordinance is retyped, just like you said, it's already going to add another, it's going to make it more accessible, because if you can actually use the document and not have to like flip through it. the way it is.
Yeah.
When is that gonna happen?
Oh God, I hope soon.
Okay.
I have to find someone to do it.
Okay.
I have to find, we have to find somebody, and it's going to cost money, and that wasn't budgeted for this year. So that's on my list too, is to start researching people that can take that on and then get an estimate and then build that into the budget starting in July.
I mean, it almost makes sense to have it rewritten after we make all the changes, doesn't it? Because otherwise we'll have to have it done twice.
Yeah. Well, and what's going to be great is that it'll be digital. So like making changes will be way less complicated than the like cut, copy, paste situation that we've got going on with it right now.
Which is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't get.
Well, it was written in 1939. I mean, it's an old document, and it was updated in 2019, but that was just amended on the cover. Like that wasn't, it hasn't been amended internally. It's just been, anytime something is changed, there will be a note in it that says like this was struck. And then you flip to the back and you see the minutes where it was discussed or the policy that was added or whatever. So, it's quite a project, but, once it's done, and yeah, I mean, we should, if there's things that we're going to recommend and the board moves forward with changing it, it would be nice to have that ahead of time for sure.
Okay. But that also gives us some time, right? If we're looking at the next, remind me, I always forget, when does the next fiscal year start?
July 1st.
July 1st. Okay. So that gives us a bit of time to get all of our ducks in a row. So
Yeah.
I say we, I mean, clearly we're going to talk about the other ones too, but right now what I'm sensing is that maybe we pull this all together and I meet with Matt, and then that, I think we're going to have to go over this again in March. I don't think we're going to be able to get everything ready for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see hold on. I have to go back to my email. Who had section 6.02 alcoholic liquors? Do we know? Is that Elaine one?
That might have been Elaine. Do you want us to look at it really quick?
Yeah. Hold on, I lost. I have too many windows open.
It has the word permit in it. I'm assuming that's probably why.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of this is the permit reservation piece.
Mm-hmm.
Page 21.
It says alcoholic liquors, no person under the influence of alcoholic liquor shall enter into, be, or remain on Park District property. No person shall sell, possess, drink, use, or deliver any alcoholic liquor on Park District property without having first obtained a permit, therefore, from the Park District.
I mean, there's no events that Are there events that sell alcohol?
We don't have a liquor license, so no.
It does, I know when you rent facilities, you cannot have alcohol, but I don't know. Some of
We-
you
we
may or may
have
not.
to-
know. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I know I don't go to a lot of events because I don't like crowds. So I didn't know if there was
I've been barking up this tree for a long time about getting a liquor ordinance, or getting a liquor license from the city in order for our vendors to sell. I may explore that further down the line, should I be in a position to do so. But right now it's a zero tolerance alcohol policy, essentially.
It the part A, to me, that seems to me like it needs not to be in there.
I don't disagree.
How-
There's no way for us to, I feel like it just lends us to like thinking or judging that somebody could essentially be under the influence, and then that, you know, that leads, that's just not a great path to go down, I don't think. So I feel like it does not belong in there either.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that just comes out.
And I think, is this, yeah, how would you reinforce it? How would you determine that someone's under the influence? Whose role
There's-
is it to do that? And
It
if
just leaves like the door wide open for bias. I feel like I don't think that it's I don't think anything good comes from that.
I agree.
I think this is another one where, is the park district itself required to make a statement at all around substance use on park district property? Is the larger question from the legal standpoint.
Well, and then the secondary question would be, if that does need to be in there, then alcohol probably should not be the only thing listed.
I think
Well,
that
cannabis is in there somewhere.
there's something around substance use.
Is it under a different one?
or something.
Be- In the beginning, at the very top of this document, it defines words, and one of the words that it defines is cannabis. What are the other ones? Controlled substance, alcoholic liquor. Yeah. I mean, as long as we do have a no alcohol policy, I think Part B has to stay in the ordinance. But I agree with you, JC. I don't think the Part A belongs in there.
Okay, so the question is part A legally necessary?
Yeah. Or
But
even
with part B, there is no permit to obtain, right? Or did I? Maybe I misheard. Right. So even that is not, doesn't accurately reflect.
Well, do you feel like it needs to stay because there's a possibility in the future that it could be right now, Brian, as executive director, has decided we will not go down the road of getting a liquor license from the city of Evanston. That's a hard no from him. In the future, potentially, that could change. So I'm hesitant to recommend taking it out entirely if there's a possibility that we could offer permits for alcohol.
I mean, maybe, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, has it ever been allowed? Well, maybe you don't know that. But,
He's been there 30 some years, and I know in the 30 some years he's been there, it hasn't.
okay. So perhaps this was written with that same idea, that at some point, but it's been 39 years and it hasn't happened. I think that if it's not something that the park district is allowing, that the ordinance should line up with, it shouldn't state that this is something you could possibly do, And then people learn that actually you can't do it because there's a policy that says that we don't allow it. So
Right.
my recommendation would be for this to align with the policy. And if it changes, then to change it at that point too.
Mhm. We do make sure, like on the rental applications, on the permits, on the reservation stuff, like everything does say no alcohol is allowed. So we make sure to communicate to communicate that to people specifically when they are seeking those things out. But in terms of like people just coming to like a concert and bringing wine, you know, there's no signage or way that they would know not to. And it's not heavily enforced.
Out of curiosity, what's City of Evanston's policy? Are you allowed to have alcohol at parks?
I don't know if you can have alcohol, like open containers at parks. I think unless it's like an event where they're managing it. Yeah, I don't know that for sure though. I know that they, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I know that if I wanted us to go down the road of getting a liquor license, I would be working with the city of Evanston to obtain that. However, what their park and recreation department does or what their policy is within their parks, I don't know that for sure, unless it's like a controlled event by the district.
Andrew, I saw you shaking your head. Do you know what the Evanston laws are?
Yeah, no gambling, no alcohol, any of the parks.
Okay, I was just curious, right? Because a lot of people don't recognize that Ridgeville is separate from the city of Evanston. So if we were going to have different rules from them, then we would need to make that more clear. Like we're a Ridgeville Park and our rules are different. But I don't know really of anywhere that you're allowed to drink alcohol outside that wasn't sold to you at that location. Okay. So I think that first part A needs to be struck. And Part B needs to reflect what's currently happening at the Park District. If the Park District gets a liquor license in the future, hopefully the ordinances will be digital by then. It'll be a really easy switch to get that in there, right? Because then at that point, it should probably be clear, like whether or not you can bring your own alcohol to events, whether or not it has to be purchased alcohol. Like that whole thing's going to have to be written properly. Yeah,
and that would depend on the liquor licensing. And it also, like, it's really up to the board. I mean, the board may very well decide, you know, that's not something that they want to pursue, especially if the city's park and rec department, you know, doesn't allow alcohol in their parks. My guess is they'll probably stay aligned with that, but you know, who knows?
Well, in terms of like jurisdiction and stuff, can the city of Evanston come to Ridgeville and be like, you can't do that because it's within city limits? Like
No.
I guess this isn't a relevant question. We don't need to even discuss it now. It was just more of a curiosity question.
I think the answer is no.
Okay. I guess all questions are out of curiosity, but the question marks.
Not all questions.
True. Not all questions. Okay. Where are we on the ordinances? The alcoholic liquors. Okay, disorderly conduct. That was also mine. Where did I
think disorderly conduct was me. Was that right, JC? Or did we double up?
Oh, wait, no. I think you are correct. I think that one was yours. What was the other one that I did? Oh, sorry. I did standards of conduct. That's why. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I will hand it over to you then.
Yeah. And so I also am, just wide disclaimer here, I'm not a lawyer. And I also had questions of jurisdiction, which would implicate, you know, it would have implications on how we proceed with the disorderly conduct code. I did some research, and there's I found 2 law review essays from the last 2 years, one from California Law Review and one from Boston College Law Review, arguing for the removal of disorderly conduct laws because of how prone they are to bias, including racial bias, but not just racial bias. quite susceptible and also prone to being used by prosecutors to like, squash dissent on a number of levels as well. So I did some research and found the Illinois state assault laws, which do not require the assault to actually take place. The person just needs to have reasonable fear of being assaulted. I'm not as clear on Evanston's laws around assault. So this would really be something important for the lawyer to look at, for it's Matthew, right? And the lawyer to look at. But I would suggest that we remove the disorderly conduct policy entirely, knowing that we still fall under other jurisdictions, and this would possibly be caught up under assault laws. There was one other thing I was going to say, and it just flew my mind. Oh, and just to actually read through the code too, you hopefully all have it in front of you, but you can see that a lot of these elements are, it's pretty easy to see how these could be very susceptible, prone to bias. So I can share the articles with you, the law review articles, and I don't know what the district will say, or what you all say, but.
Andrew and I emailed back and forth about this a little bit. I think I personally absolutely agree. And I also really appreciate that you're bringing your evidence and your research with you. I think that'll be really helpful when we bring this to the board. Does anybody else have any other comments on the disorderly conduct? Okay. We already went through the begging and solicitations. I think it was just on there twice from Pat's recommendations, because it's in the like the language needs to be changed in the table of contents as well as the actual document. Oh, is this just in here twice? Did I do parades, public gatherings, and assemblies? Oh, that's too. That was in there twice because of the thing too. Was picnics a totally separate one? Someone work on the picnics one?
That's the one that was struck.
Okay. So then
That's already
that brings
been
us. Okay, then that brings us to the other one that I did. That's the standards of conduct, which is 9.03. It is on, it says page 46, but now I can't remember if that's the actual document or the PDF.
I think it's the actual document. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I was going through this, and initially I had a hard time understanding. Hold on, let me get there so I can read it to you all. I had a hard time understanding, what it was that Dr. Effiam had flagged. Okay, so it's on page 53 of the PDF, if that's helpful for anybody. It's the standards of conduct. Every officer or employee of the Park District shall be subject to and abide by the standards of conduct set forth below. It talks about impartiality. It talks about the use of public property. It talks about conflict of interest, disclosure of financial interest, political activity. One of the things that needs to be changed in this, as well as the rest of the document, is the gendered speech. His or her duties. Partially, Aisha had noticed in the definitions, a person was defined as a man or a woman, so that clearly needs to be changed also. At first, when I went through this, nothing really stood out to me, and I really would appreciate, it's kind of long, but I would appreciate if someone else would look through and make sure I didn't miss anything else. But then I went back through Dr. Effiam's report, and I realized this one is not one that, from my understanding, that she felt like something needed to be removed. It's that she wanted to have it added that, hold on, let me get back to my rewrites, that the equity statement be put in there. Oh, hold on. I take it back. There was a change that I had noted. an A. Under A is the impartiality, and I felt like it was the part that says advantage or favor beyond. Let me find that. Hold on. Clicking between two screens. Every officer and employee shall perform his or her duties with impartiality and without justice or bias for the benefit of all residents of the Park District. No officer or employee shall grant or make available to any other resident any consideration, treatment, advantage, or favor beyond that which is available to every other resident. And then my recommendation is to add in the piece of regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, right? Like that whole list. I felt like that should be added on just to make it super clear into the impartiality. And then adding an E that says something along the lines of every officer and employee shall perform their duties with impartiality and without prejudice or bias for the benefit of all residents of the Park District and shall embrace our values as stated in the Ridgeville Park District Equity Statement, and then have the equity statement listed there. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. That one was kind of long, and I was a little confused at first as to why it was flagged. I found it was a little further in Dr. Effiam's report, the reference to adding the equity statement in here.
Yeah, JC, I was going to agree with you. I don't think there's anything in there that needs to be taken out other than just revision of the gendered language. And I think there should certainly be an addition of our equity mission.
Do you feel like at the end of that, beyond that which is available to every other resident, do you feel like we should add that, like regardless of race, gender, ethnicity?
Sure. Or we can just make like an A1 or something, and just include our entire equity charter or something, you know what I mean? Like it can just be like kind of an addendum to that.
I guess it gets a little redundant. If we add the equity statement, we don't need that, the impartiality in the previous statement, because it's all part of the code of conduct.
Yeah, I mean, I think that language has to be in here somewhere, but I don't know that it has to be listed twice. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know if we need to add it to the end of the sentence or just like fully flesh that out with like what that specifically means, particularly in regards. I mean, because we're talking about standards of conduct in relation to board members and Park District employees. And because, which we're going to talk about later, about training and whatnot, that needs to be, that's part of our equity charter, but I think it's time to transition at least that piece into the actual ordinance for the Park District. And that becomes standard of like personnel policy and the whole, shebang anytime anybody's coming on board. So yeah, I think how we want to do that, we can figure that out, but I think it certainly belongs here.
Okay, I think it makes the most sense to just add the E on there and put the equity statement in there.
There's already, I think it would be an F because there's already an E.
Oh, I know the alphabet. You are correct. Okay, yeah. So then F would be the equity statement.
Yeah, and so then maybe on A, there's a reference, like maybe what you said as outlined in F, in item F, right? And then item F is our equity charter.
I think in Dr. Effiam's report, she specified the equity statement, not the charter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That's written on the charter, right?
It's on the charter and it's also on the website. I actually was trying to look for it while I was chatting and I was not successful. It's listed on the equity page, if I remember correctly, at the top.
Yes. Okay. That's our statement.
Yes.
Okay.
Ridgeville Park District is committed to ensuring that our parks, facilities, services, and programs are accessible to all people regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, or citizenship status, sex, gender, identity or expression, pregnancy, sexual orientation, age, disability, or marital status.
I'm noticing now that I'm looking at the equity page, I already put a caveat there. Please note all content for this equity page was compiled by Ridgeville's equity consultants. I think Aisha added that to what I copied and pasted.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think, hold on, let me, I'm feeling very disorganized. Okay, there's the agenda. Okay, so those are all the ordinances. I think maybe, and let me know what you all think. I think at this point, I have a meeting with Matt Mitchell and talk to him about the changes that we see and ask him what next steps he wants us to take. And I think, having, and I'm assuming, Aisha, this would have to be on a secondary contract, having Aisha go through the entire ordinance and splitting out the permits and the reservations, I think is going to be a really, not that Aisha would split it all out, but I think that Aisha should be going through the whole ordinance since in Pat's report, it says that she didn't. And then from there, we need to change the page. We need to differentiate between permits and reservations, and I guess see what else, if anything else comes up.
I'll add that to my list too, JC, and maybe we can all do it, but I'll start looking through the ordinance and seeing if I can flag all the uses of permit in there so we can start compiling just one general
Okay.
Statement on reservations and permits.
Okay, and then with that in mind, I think that we're going to have to meet again on this in March. I don't think this is something we're going to have ready for the March meeting. Does that feel good to everybody? Okay.
Yeah, and I would also add, oh no, is there a definition in the definition section? Is reservation in there?
Oh,
Permit is, but not reservation.
Yeah, so adding what we mean when we say reservation.
Yeah,
and maybe even specifically stating the difference between the permits and the reservations.
Mhm.
I will say, and I could be wrong, I would have to double check, but I do think because I do it from time to time, when you want to have like a sheltered space at an Evanston park, I believe they're calling it a permit. And then you get like a little form to put in the window to tell people who are trying to join your party that they can't. Not in the window, it's like a little plastic thing. I can look into that too, just to see what they're doing. And not that we should necessarily be doing the same thing that they're doing, because City of Evanston is not going through all their stuff the way that we are, but just out of curiosity. And I think it'd be good to know what Evanston does anyway, just in case people come with questions to Ridgeville and you guys know what the differences are.
I mean, I think just as kind of a jumping off point, I would call anything where organizations or businesses are selling things on property or holding events, that's a permit. If it's an individual community member that wants to have like a party or barbecue or hang out at the park, that's a reservation. If it's a school, if it's a nonprofit, that's a reservation. I think if there's like, if we need insurance from you, then that's a permit.
Right. If there's something other than I want this space at this time, anything beyond just wanting the space at that time becomes a permit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that also, I think that'll be clear to understand once it's all defined. Okay. Awesome.
This is completely separate, but connected to when looking at the rewrite and looking at the definitions too, there's language about this thing is commonly referred to as that. And it's like with using some specific locations. And so people who have no reference point or connection commonly referred by who. And that wouldn't be useful or helpful for someone who has no connection or is coming in brand new to the park. So that just another place that'll need some updating attention when looking at the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else on the ordinances before we move on? Okay. Item C on the agenda is create a list of events and events to be sponsored by the Park District, as well as recommended amounts in preparation for a recommendation. So we don't need to talk a whole ton about this today. Natalie, I'm sorry, will you remind me when the budget discussions for the next year start? Like, when do we have to have our amounts by?
So the budget is passed in September and the process starts in March. It's a whole thing. So we start kind of building it now and then start talking to the board about it like in May. Moving into June and July, there will be a meeting in August, a special meeting in August for the board to like really pick last chance, changes, and then it's passed in September. So starting next month, Brian and I will be sitting down and looking through it.
Okay.
I would say we need like a hard answer on this. I'd say by May.
Okay, I think that's easy.
Yeah. I think we have a pretty solid idea of the things that we want to participate in for the 2023-24 fiscal year. We just need to we need to figure out like at what level we want to sponsor this stuff, come up with a number amount so that as we're budgeting, we can recommend to the board that they budget X amount of money for equity or add X amount of money to the special event budget for us to participate in these community events.
Okay. So, in terms of, here's what I'm thinking. I mean, we've got, it's kind of a short list. We've got a short list of events. I mean, I have a short list of events. We can always add those on there. And then maybe we can divvy these up. We can each do a little bit of research and find out how much money we would need to do, right? Because there's oftentimes like this much money just to participate, this much money to sponsor and get. And once you become a sponsor, right, there's like all the advertisement that comes along with it. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like if we table this and talk about it next month, if we're coming with event suggestions, just come with a number.
Okay.
Right. And then we can just make a list based on things that, you and I are going to have a lot of crossover events that we want to do. So you and I can just touch base on that. But maybe there's events that Andrew wants us to participate in that we don't know about yet. So if Andrew wants to make a recommendation, just come with the recommendation and like a budget amount. And then we'll just compile a list and there you have it.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Let's table this. We'll talk about this again in March. That brings us to D. This one is for action to make a recommendation to the board regarding new employee equity training requirements, specifically addressing the difference between the full-time and part-time, or full-time and summer staff. So for those of you that don't quite understand what that means, right, like the Park District has varied employees. There's the full-time year-round staff that is Natalie, Jung, Brian, Miss V, the maintenance staff. Oh, Miss V, no?
No, we have full-time staff and then we have permanent part-time staff. So Jung is our office manager. She works part-time, but she's a permanent
Okay.
employee. She's not seasonal. V would be considered a seasonal employee. So Marcos is currently our only maintenance person. Poor man, had a rough day. Thank you to him for all of the work he's done in the snow. So Marcos is a full-time foreman. I'm the full-time program director, and Brian is a full-time executive director. Jung is a part-time permanent employee. So
Okay, so permanent as
Yeah.
opposed to year round. Okay, okay. Thank you for that clarification. And then there's the summertime staff. So initially when we spoke about all this, we wanted everybody to go through the 6 hours of equity training. And then once we stopped to think about it, paying all of the summertime staff to do 6 hours of training there's no way to fit that amount of money in the budget. So we need to pull together a recommendation of like what the expectations are going to be for the different employees at the park district. Just so you all know, like those of us who work for the park district, there are certain things that we have to do. Like summer staff has orientation where we go through like our, CPR first aid has to be, up and running. We have to do like a sexual harassment training. So one of the ideas that we had was for summer staff is having part of the orientation be equity training. But so I guess what's everyone thinking in terms of like how, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. Permanent staff has to do all 6 hours, right? Like I think that's just a given. I personally think that part-time permanent staff should also do all 6 hours.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I'm taking notes. I keep forgetting you all can't see me. All right.
Can I toss something out there, JC?
Yes.
So as part of our employee packet, there's a sheet of paper and you sign off saying that you received and reviewed each of these documents. One is our personnel policy. One is a gift ordinance, an ordinance about not accepting gifts. One is our park district sexual harassment policy. And then there's a fourth one for the state sexual harassment policy. I would like to on that, and every employee signs this, every single one. Seasonal, which includes camp staff, that includes instructors, anybody who's on payroll. And that of course includes like permanent staff, part-time or full-time. So I would like to put something on that page that also requires them to review whatever equity training we decide we want them to do. If it's going to be a permanent part-time or full-time, I would recommend the 6 hour training. I would recommend that we watch those videos. If it's a seasonal staff, I don't know if there's a way to develop like an hour-long training for them to watch, or create some, or at the very least give them the equity charter for them to become familiar with as another document that is included in their employee packet.
That's exactly what I think too. My only concern in adding it to orientation is I feel like that day is so long. I feel like a lot of the kids are checking out by the end of that time.
I think JC, I think it can certainly be discussed at orientation, like hands down, it should be.
Or are you
right?
thinking that they would watch it separately?
This is a separate thing. It's like when they do their paperwork, like right now I've hired all my summer staff. They're setting up meetings to come in with me. I'm giving them their paperwork to take home. And I say, listen, we're going to email you these 4 documents. You need to review them. And once you've read through them, then you sign off on this paper that you've done it. And then you return that to me with the rest of your employee packet. So that's something that they would be doing on their own. I think that needs to be done regardless. We can, in addition to that, cover some of that during the orientation. We can read the equity charter out loud in the same way that we read the personnel policy out loud.
Yeah. What I would recommend, and I can work work with, I guess it would be you, Natalie, on this is how to integrate some sort of focus on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion into the orientation, depending on what your orientation looks like. And identifying how to do that using that day. I think it also should be for anyone who's not required to do the full 6 hours. It could be recommended. It could be stated that it's not a requirement, but it's highly recommended that you do this as well, so that they know that and they hear that, and then they also know how to access the information as well.
That's a great idea. And yeah, I would happily talk to you about how to incorporate covering some of the equity training into the orientation, into like our day.
The only people that leaves out is youth in the parks.
Youth in the parks is seasonal staff.
So they would fall
So they would fall under the seasonal staff category. I think
Okay.
the only group with which we're talking about incorporating some like live training is with the camp staff every spring.
Okay.
I hear you, and I think it's important that the youth in the park staff participate in some way. But they would fall under seasonal staff. So they would receive like the charter, they'd have to sign off on having read it. And then we would recommend that they watch the training.
Is there any way, like, is there any amount of the training that we could make mandatory for seasonal staff? Not really, right? Because then it would have to be paid. I'm just thinking I would really like the youth in the park staff to watch the third set of training videos because of the basketball piece. Is there a way to have that happen? Other than just recommended?
I mean, we can recommend it. You can recommend that to the board.
Okay. How do you all feel about me recommending to the board that I don't know exactly. I don't know the right way to make this work. But the youth in the parks is a crucial, they're the connective piece between Ridgeville and the community, right? So like we really need them to be on board with this and to all be speaking kind of the same language with this. So do you all feel, I don't know if there's a better way to go about this.
I can talk to Darren. I've been asking Darren to come to one of our meetings. I've talked to him a little bit about our conversations about basketball, and he has a lot of opinions about that that I think are really useful for our conversations because he is with the youth playing all summer long. But I think he has a lot of like really good input. So I've been trying to find a time where he could come, but he teaches driver's ed, so he works in the evenings. But I can talk to Darren and see if what his thoughts are. I mean, he's like the supervisor of the youth in the parks team, so he might he might have some thoughts.
I think it's really important to have him be a part of this conversation. I don't know if it would be possible if you guys do chat, if I could sit in on that.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Andrew, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I was just say it just sounds weird, and I have to confess I haven't made it to the third video yet. So it just seems weird to direct folk just to a third video in particular. And so hoping as well that we have what is the beginning of a long, good relationship with Aisha as a consultant. Would it be possible to, I mean, obviously working within Aisha's, not causing extra work above and beyond, but to then create a specific thing for these summer staff folk that is encapsulated. It's not just taking something out of another thing, but it's actually the whole. It's a.
Oh, Andrew, I think you froze. I don't know if you can hear me. I think I might understand what you're saying. So have Aisha do a specific training for summer staff. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to overlap between youth in the parks and summer camps.
Yeah, I think that's what's coming out of this conversation is the need to also create an abbreviated version of the training because of capacity and resources. So I think that's the direction for the recommendation that we're headed, which I mean, obviously have to just be contracted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to speak for Andrew, but I believe that that's what he was trying to say. But it also seems consistent with what I believe everyone is stating as well.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, we have to talk about like budget and how to deal with that in order for you to have the hours to do such a thing. But assuming we can, I mean, I could schedule the summer staff to a Zoom for 1 hour in the spring, and they could do the training with you, and I could record it in the same way that we did with the 6 hours for us. And we will play that for, permanent staff that come on board and new commissioners. I can record like the hour-long training that you would do with the staff and then have that available, and I could invite the Youth in the Parks team to be a part of that as well. And if they can't, then I can send them the recording.
I think that sounds perfect.
I know that training that you did with us, Aisha, took a lot of time and planning and preparation. So we'll just have to talk about what that would look like to do this condensed version, so that we can make sure that we, if we don't have the money and the budget for you currently, that we can make a recommendation to the board to like move some stuff around before this fiscal year is over, so that we can accommodate that. I mean, I very much hope to work with you beyond this fiscal year, but it would be nice to have this piece of this done in the next few months, so that we can apply it to this summer staff.
I agree. I think that'd be fantastic if we can make that work. Okay. So just for, I want to make sure I have this clear for the recommendation for the board. Permanent staff, whether full or part-time, does all 6 hours. If we could have Aisha do an abbreviated version for seasonal staff, which would include the camp staff and the youth in the parks, that's what we recommend, and then they have to decide whether or not they're going to be willing to do it.
I mean, I would add, I would just say all seasonal staff. I mean, instructors too.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Oh, we need to vote on that, don't we? Because it's official recommendation.
Yeah.
Would somebody like to make a motion to recommend to the board that all permanent staff receive 6 hours of equity training? And that I should be contracted to provide a 1 hour training for all seasonal staff?
I'll make that motion.
Someone like to second?
I'll second it.
All right, Julie, if you could roll call vote us.
Stacy Herman,
Yes.
Natalie Silly,
Yes.
Andrew Weimer.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to keep you all so late. This is such a long meeting. Okay, we're on our last item. It's the review, the draft for the scholarship policy. Natalie, this is your item.
Yes. Did you have a chance to look over it?
Yes.
You did. Okay, great. I'm just curious. So Matt Mitchell and I have been working on this. We don't have any rhyme or reason or process really to our scholarship process as is. We basically operate on an honesty need basis. If you say you need it, we can offer it to you, which I think we would like to continue doing in a more structured way. And also in a way that we can start budgeting for the scholarship assistance that we're giving, and making a policy that will be transparent so that folks know how to access it and can see how it works. So this is what we came up with. Some of it we had gotten the template from the city of Evanston for how they operate with their scholarships. We used some similar things. They only offer scholarships to folks in the city of Evanston. I want to continue offering them to everybody who needs them. So we just put some parameters around that. If you live within district, you're eligible for up to 50% scholarship for all programming for a year. And that's for you and everybody in your family. If you're out of district, you're eligible for up to 25% scholarship on all programming for the year. The process is laid out here as to how you apply for that. It's like a one and done. So as opposed to folks having to reapply and ask for scholarship every time they register for something, this is a come into the office one time. We're not going to keep your documents. We just need to see proof of income. And then you're approved and that's it. And then you can just re-up the next year. So that will also cut down on work for our office manager, and I think just be helpful in us tracking, what people owe and what they've paid and communications and whatnot. As for eligibility, we used the same model that is used to determine the free and reduced lunch program here. And then also put a caveat. There are some folks who fall below the federal poverty guidelines, in which case on a case-by-case basis, we can review if there's more scholarship available than the 50 or 25%. So that's kind of a quick overview of the policy. Was there anything that you noticed in there that you feel needs to be discussed or perhaps updated? So what's going to happen, just really quickly, we're going to take this to the board and recommend to the board that they adopt this policy.
Andrew?
Yeah, so what you just mentioned about the possibility of essentially, I'm just reading into this, a possibility of 100% scholarship for certain folk based on need.
Mm-hmm.
I just did I miss that in here? I didn't see that written down. Where is that?
Yeah. It's in there. It's at the end of, so there's in-district eligibility listed and out-of-district. The last paragraph of each of those states that if your annual household income is at or below the federal. Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah. That's important to me that we have that in there, because there are a few individuals who I think may need that. And I really like that we operate on a very if you need it, we can offer it to you. I think that's aligned with our mission for the park district to provide affordable programming. So
Yeah, I guess I would just say, I wonder if bringing that up earlier into the policy section in that third, essentially the third paragraph, would make it just all seem more welcoming.
Okay. I can do that.
Natalie, the comment that I have, and I didn't have time to actually look into this to be able to like give you as much information as I think you're going to need. I don't know exactly how all of this works, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, my family, I mean, I know my family's above the poverty line, but because my kids are on Medicaid, we automatically get free lunches.
Okay.
So I don't know. Where did I see it? Right, like, so the way that this reads, it sounded, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you had to have the poverty guidelines piece. But if you have the free and reduced lunch, does that still get you, even if you don't meet the financial requirements?
Yeah, so we can't only ask. So if you have a free and reduced lunch letter, you've gone through this process already with someone. So like, we're not going to make you do that again. You can just show us that you have it, and that's good. We don't want to make this very complicated for people. So if you've got the free and reduced lunch letter, no matter how you got it, if you have it,
Okay.
that's fine. You qualify. Though there's some folks that don't have kids. They're coming and taking classes and applying for scholarships. So they're not going to have a free and reduced lunch letter. So this is a way for us to determine, based on their income, which level of scholarship they're eligible for. And again, if there's outstanding circumstances that mean they need more than a 50% scholarship, then we'll be able to determine that.
Would it be helpful to list in the application process the examples of documents that you could bring? Right, because when I read income verification, that makes me think that I wouldn't be able to come show you my lunch letter.
I was going to say the exact same, clarity around what exactly you would be asking people to provide.
Okay.
You just shared verbally, I think, wasn't clear from reading.
Got it. So what documents can be provided for proof of income?
Yeah, and expanding it possibly beyond the free and reduced lunch. I don't know if we could include like SNAP or a range of other things that would provide sort of this instant verification.
What is it? There's SNAP. There's one more. It's Medicaid, SNAP, and there's one more.
There's a whole list. We have a whole list. It didn't make it into this document, but we've got it. We've got one from the city of Evanston. SNAP is on there. Shoot, I don't remember the other ones, but there's a whole.
Okay.
There's a whole thing.
I think just making that a little more clear.
Yeah.
And then just out of curiosity, the part that's highlighted, scholarship award balances must be paid in full before the start of is that highlighted because it's in question?
Yeah, I added that and I'm waiting for Matt to sign off on it.
Okay.
We had discussed it, but I think it needed to be clearer than what it said, how it was typed previously. So I just kind of fleshed it out a little bit.
Would it be possible to add to the park district may arrange an agreed upon payment plan if requested by the guarantee, or the possibility of more scholarship funds? Right, like if there's a family that like can't pay it but still wants to go to programming, is there a way for us to allow that to happen?
If they request a payment plan, the park district may arrange an agreed upon payment plan if requested by the grantee.
So they wouldn't be able to get more scholarship money at that point to pay off that balance?
To pay off their scholarship? Scholarship to pay off their scholarship? Is that what you mean?
A scholarship to pay off the balances that weren't covered by the previous scholarship. Does that make sense? Right, so like a family comes in, they paid 50% tuition, or they got 50%, scholarship, they can't pay the other 50%. Like when the bill,
Yeah.
well, I guess we pay ahead of for programming. I was just curious if that's a possibility, right? Like sometimes people sign up for stuff and then life circumstances change and that availability to pay for the program they signed up for is no longer.
Or could we at
Yeah,
least?
I mean, I think,
Or a reduced
I'm sorry.
cost.
What?
So I was just gonna say, or at least add the possibility of a review of their eligibility for further assistance or something like that, if in the case of life circumstances had changed or such.
That's perfect.
Okay, wait, what?
I
Okay,
don't remember what I
review.
just said.
A review of possibility of further scholarship. Is that what you said?
Yeah, a review of eligibility
Eligibility
for
further scholarship.
for additional scholarships, if needed or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Review of eligibility for further scholarships if needed.
Yeah, something like
Circumstances changed.
right.
I mean, I think in that case, we would put them on a payment plan, and that payment plan, you know, we can agree to whatever they need, but you mean to like review it and deduct more scholarship than what they were originally offered.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not that I would imagine that happening often, but just so that there's a possibility of that happening. In case.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to Matt about that.
Okay.
Right now we have a lot of outstanding scholarships that just aren't being paid because we don't really follow up on it and we don't have any structure around how to do this. So that's why creating this policy is important. So I want to avoid creating a situation with which we're still like sitting on a ton of scholarships that are never paid and people continue to like register for programming.
No, I agree. Because the other thing, if that keeps happening, we can't keep offering scholarships. Like this needs to be sustainable.
Well, we can't offer them more programming. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
well,
I
I meant more on the bigger scale, right? Like if the park district is giving out partial scholarships and people aren't paying the part they're supposed to, eventually we're going to run out of scholarship money.
Right.
Like, I see why this is in place. And I also see that there are some people who are going to take advantage of this policy. I just want to have a little loophole in there, right? Because if you're going to write the policy, you got to stick to the policy. Writing that loophole in there is going to allow you to accommodate for that like one family in a blue moon that's not going to be able to do this.
For sure. Yeah. I'm wondering if it's just as simple as I think essentially what Andrew was saying, just reviewing the eligibility, we can somehow incorporate language into this that communicates that if your circumstances change and you communicate with us, then we can review.
Exactly.
Review your balances and how to move forward.
Okay. So are you going to go?
So I'll create a line around that based on the language I wrote down from Andrew, and I'll run that by Matt and put that in there as well.
Okay. And then are you and Matt going to talk about this and then bring it back to the committee again for an official recommendation, or is that just going to go through the board?
We don't need a recommendation from the committee because this is something he and I are doing separately. So okay. I wanted the REDI committee to review it because you should, anything like this. But it's not coming from the committee, so I don't need a recommendation.
Okay.
Just wanted your advice.
Anything else on the scholarship policy? I will add, I know a good amount of regional families, and I know a lot of people are really appreciative of not only how much scholarship money is available, but how easy the process is. I've had multiple people comment to me about how it really makes a big difference not to have to like I mean, the amount of documents that you have to provide sometimes to get financial assistance becomes overwhelming to the point where it's sometimes not worth it. And I think that the way the Park District does it, people really appreciate. So I just want to throw that in there.
I agree. I think I don't like making people jump through hoops for things like this. And I like that for so long we take you at face value. If you say you need it, then we believe you and we'll offer you what we can offer you. I think just, like I said, for transparency and also just to save Jung the headache, because it is real hard right now. So I think this will be really helpful to add some structure and still do the thing that we like to do.
Well, I think again, it makes it clear what the process is, and the more clear and forthright and transparent we are, the more equitable we can be.
I agree.
Okay. That brings us to the call of the committee. Does anybody have anything they want to throw in there? I promise not to speak for long. I just wanted to say thank you to you all for continuing to do this. I feel really re-energized having gone through the training. I'm so excited that we're finally tackling these ordinances. I'm sad that we lost Elaine, but I also told Elaine that, you know, if she would have left us a year or two ago, like it could have been detrimental enough to like wreck the committee. She is leaving us in a position where we are strong and we know what we're supposed to be doing. We have hopefully someone new that's going to be joining us soon. And I'm sad to see her go, but I'm also really proud that her leaving does not make me feel like we're not going to be able to get our stuff done. So I just really wanted to appreciate all your work and your willingness to continue doing all this. And Aisha, thank you so much for sticking it out with us. You have made such an enormous difference in what we've been able to accomplish, and I look forward to continuing to do it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna adjourn us. It is 8:28. We just do like we all agree, right, that we're adjourning?
We all agree.
Adjourn.
Adjourned. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Bye, Mark.
Right.
Bye,
Thanks for
everybody.
sticking it out.